Hi, everybody. My name is Jimmy Carroll. I'm the Vice President of Operations at Tech B2B Marketing here at Day 2 of SPIE Photonics West 2024. And I have the pleasure of being joined by Ray Hoare of Concurrent EDA. Ray, thanks so much for taking the time.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course. And also I'm joined by my colleague, John Lewis. So Ray, for those who don't know, could you tell the audience a little bit about Concurrent EDA and what you guys do there?
Sure. So for the past 17 years, we've been taking algorithms and moving them into FPGAs. So methods of compute and moving them to FPGAs, and FPGAs are field programmable gate arrays that enable you to do compute. And we've evolved with the chips and the technology, and now it's system on a chip, and so it's hardware, software, all in a nice package. And we've embed that into cameras as well as devices.
Okay, cool. So I've got some follow-up questions both about FPGAs and processing in general, but I want to talk about AI because it's everywhere, right?
Of course, absolutely.
Literally and figuratively with marketing hype and industrial world and in consumer side. It was maybe, we were talking about this yesterday, John, it was maybe sometime around Vision Stuttgart 2016, yeah. Where the AI hype cycle, and specifically deep learning, really took off, and it was being touted as maybe something it's not, right? It's magic. It's going to solve everything. But these days, deep learning has sort of settled in as a very useful tool that helps augment existing computer vision, machine vision systems for a number of different ways, in a number of different ways. So I'm just curious, from your perspective, what are some ways that you've seen your customers and friends in the industry use AI in their applications? Sure.
And if we think about AI, there's like, well, what does that exactly mean, right? So I think of AI as putting compute and extracting features and characteristics from the image in real time. So from our perspective, AI is artificial intelligence. It's something that we can embed in computers that help us make decisions, filter down that data. So for example, if you have a high-speed camera and you want to capture all the data and you want to do processing on it, if that is really a fire hose of data, and you have to filter it. Otherwise, you're going to put it into disk, which means you've got lots of disks, and then you're going to wait a while, and then you're going to process it. So with compute, we've got to move it towards the edge, and AI is a great way to do that. There's a bunch of methods people have done to classify images. Oh, is this a defect? Is this not a defect? So we see that moving into the cameras.
John, I don't want to monopolize, but if you had.
Yeah, I was just curious. I've heard of techniques where you're combining, like, say, deep learning with traditional machine vision tools. For example, finding a scratch or a dent in the surface finish of a piece of metal, like say a stamped component or a polished component, and it's hard to quantify what that dent or scratch looks like with traditional tools, but with AI or deep learning, you can identify it, flag it, and then you can maybe go to a traditional gauging tool, or and measure it and see if it's too big or too small. Small enough, maybe it's not a fail or a flawed product, and if it's too big, then it would be. Is there a way on these new edge chips where you can combine the traditional tools with the AI, or are they handled on separate chips?
Yeah, so this is where things are getting interesting, because right now we're at 28 nanometer, right? That's the size of the transistor. And now we're going 4 times smaller to 7 nanometer. And we've gone from FPGAs to now we're calling adaptive compute devices. And they're like, so, FPGAs are dead, long live the FPGAs. We just call them adaptive compute devices right now because they're not just glue logic. They're not just sensor interface to camera interface. Now we have like thousands of compute cores inside the chip that we can do processing with. And can we do everything inside the chip? Maybe, maybe not, but it depends on what you're trying to do. But as the resolutions get bigger, we have to get that fire hose of data down to something that's reasonable, even so that big hunkin' GPU can handle it. So there's always going to be some edge filtering, processing, finding the scratch, right? We can do convolutions, which is a way of looking at the regions of pixels and extracting features, and then saying, I found something, and filter that data. So we're filtering the key features and then sending it to the more complex AI back on the PC. But if we don't do that, you can't handle it on the back end.
Ray, you mentioned GPUs, and that's something I wanted to ask about. So there's been a lot of developments there, particularly from NVIDIA with Jetson becoming so popular. And GPUs might get a lot of the love when it comes to AI processing at the edge, but what are some other options out there?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. GPUs are great when they're in a computer, and they have lots of cores, and they consume lots of power. And Jetson is a method to get it to the edge, but from a ops per watt perspective, FPGAs and these adaptive compute devices are far superior. There's no comparison. So if you look at compute per watt, FPGAs are dominant. And where you get a Jetson, you've got a few cores in it, and that's good, and they're easy to use, but they're going to be hotter. They're not going to give you as much. It has its niche, but if you really want the compute power, you've got to go to an adaptive compute device, and AMD is pushing that this next year. That's what you're going to hear this year. This year's AMD is out of them is AI, and inside of these adaptive compute devices, they're called Versal, there are AI engines. And so they go from, you've got 50 AI engines to you've got 400 AI engines in the FPGA, the adaptive compute, plus 2 cores, plus the transceivers. So everything that you really need, taken from the PC, moving it to the edge, it's getting there.
So maybe this is just my perception, and if I'm wrong, please do correct me. It seems like, best way to phrase it, why are GPUs seemingly so popular, and why aren't these FPGAs being deployed more? Is it because of the difficulty of VHDL programming, and if so, what could people do?
Right, yeah. So those are accurate. GPUs are really widely available. There's an actual programming language. It's a variation of C++, and so you can program it and you can get used to it. And they've extracted parallelism, so they have all this parallel processing they can do, essentially a bunch of threads, and on the data, and it's programming. And we've done GPU programming, and we do that as a service. So primarily we're a services organization. We have a few product lines, but we really like taking those algorithms into the edge. So it's a pain. Let me just be straight up. The tools are getting better, and we have something called high-level synthesis, which means we can write in a variation of C code with some pragmas, low level, but we can extract the parallelism. We can write it in this high-level language, with C, but with parallelism in it. And we can actually get down to the chip. So there's lots of things we can do there, but there's also layers now coming with FPGAs that are making it easier as well.
I don't want to ask too many questions in a row, John, but if you don't mind, I just want to ask, will chips like this, like the ones from AMD or the ones that are out there now, has that enabled people to push AI capabilities more directly onto the camera?
Yes. So right now we have a camera that's a high-speed camera that can do 2,000 frames per second, and we can do more processing in the camera than we can on a high-end Intel. Now, that requires us as engineers to do that, and that's fine. We take people's algorithms, and that's what we do. So that's our specialty, right? So if somebody's got some crazy algorithm, call me, right? Because this is what I love, right? You can't be too hairy or nasty, because I'm like, ooh, what's that? I like that. Ooh, this is fun. But we can then say, okay, maybe trim this, and we can do that part in the camera. And we can do it at this frame rate. That way we can do the processing, respond to what we see on the image really quickly. So if you think of what they classically called a control loop, I have a stimulus coming in, I do some processing, I have some control going out. So that loop of processing and control has to be really, really fast. So if I'm trying to guide something mechanical, or I'm trying to change some power, I can do that in an FPGA really, really quickly, as between frames, even at 2,000 frames per second. So we can handle 40 gig of processing, do that processing, do that response, control power, control actuators really quickly before the frame comes in. Now, if you take that all the way back to a computer, Well, you got to go from the camera to the transceivers to the frame grabber to the processor over the PCIe bus, back to the frame grabber, and then back to what you're controlling. So if you really want to have that control loop be really, really quick, you got to push it to the edge. So that's really where things are going to be, the value add is, because I can't wait that long. Like, I have to respond. And in reality, if you can do it in software, I tell my customers, do it in software. Like, don't put it in an FPGA, it's great. But if you can't, that's when, if you're running over a gigabit per second and over a giga operation per second, you have to do a GPU or an FPGA or an adaptive compute module.
So the benefit is response time and speed. Can you talk a little bit about some of the applications where that kind of speed and response times are required?
Sure. So some of the applications, if you're controlling a laser and you want to change classically melt pool monitoring is a good application where I'm trying to control the power of the laser. And the more that I put on the laser, that pool gets bigger or smaller. I didn't put enough power in, so I can detect that, I can push it back. That's an example. If I'm trying to look at, I see an event, I want to trigger based off of an event. Maybe I'm going to trigger some other system, and we're doing the processing that we've seen that. We've seen it with high-speed moving, things that move very quickly that we want to capture and react to. And there's some things in the defense space that we care about there.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought you might have been talking about. What are some, beyond AI? What are some of the applications? Like you mentioned it, like frame rates are getting higher and resolutions are getting higher, and a lot of these applications. We spoke to somebody yesterday in the AR VR space and some folks in hyperspectral, and you're just dealing with a lot of data. What are some other applications that folks that you've worked with where large amounts of data are required and you've been able to help them?
Sure. So if we think about one of our demonstrations is a 3D extraction, so 3D metrology. So where you're passing a laser over an object, and what you're doing is you're actually detecting the height of the laser and calculating that, because you've got the camera facing down, you've got the laser coming at an angle, or the other way around, doesn't matter. But they're at different angles. And then we can compute based off of the pixel height.
Like a profiler.
A profile at that one point, and then the object moves. And so what we did was we put all of that in the camera. So we're not actually sending back the image at all. We're just sending back the height. So all of a sudden you've got a 2D image that we process down into a one-dimensional sets of values that is part of the image. So now you send back the height map rather than sending back the image. And so we've taken the data, done the calculations, and you can tune the calculations. Like, oh, I want this algorithm to be parameterizable. Sure. Can you parameterize C code? Of course you can. Well, that's a register. You put that in there, I can tune the register, and so we can do different things. We can do different algorithms. Center of gravity, we can do other ways of detecting height and getting rid of noise.
When you say things like, can you parameterize C code? Sure, and like it's obvious, it's German, Ray. To me, anyway.
Yeah, it's okay.
But what else, John? Any follow up there? I don't want to.
So you're talking like you could output a volume.
Yeah.
Profile, calculate whatever volume it is based off the plane.
Right. So if you think about where sensors are going, right? We're seeing 150 megapixel images, right? They're running 5-10 frames a second. Well, that's a lot of pixels. We're into the gigapixel per second, right? So it's like, wait a second. Okay, who's going to process that?
Yeah.
I mean, do you really need all of that? Who's going to look at that? Well, you need it for a certain snapshot in time. You need certain key pieces of it. And so we're talking about AI and how do I grab that piece of information, put to the AI engine. Either we put it at the edge, right? Or we're extracting the things of interest. We're filtering it down. So we're not going to, our AI engine can't handle it.
You don't want to send all the data.
Yeah.
You just want to send the input data.
So AI, just so everybody knows, is we essentially are extracting every feature we can think of that we know how to compute. This is very simplified, so don't shoot me later, right? It's a nasty comment. Oh, it's not AI. He doesn't know what you're talking about. No, it's simplified, just at a high level. If we look at, like AlexNet or some of the other inferences, we can extract features from the image. Okay, so let's say I'm looking for an edge, I'm looking for a corner. Well, I may be looking for an edge here or here or here or here or here. Okay, so those are edge extraction passes on the image. So then I take this one frame and I'm making another frame and another frame and another frame, another frame, another frame. And I'm making 60 different frames with 60 different features. And then I'm saying, okay, well, maybe I want features of those features combined together, and then I want to finally put weights on them. So the compute, you've taken one frame of an image and you're turning it into hundreds of frames that you're processing. So the compute load on AI is enormous. So they always have the smaller images, so you can actually do it. You can't take a 150 megapixel image and say, oh, I'm going to put this in my AI engine. There's no way. I mean, you could, but it's going to take forever, literally, right? So you got to break it down into different regions. So if you, as we push to the edge, we can push some of that compute, find the gold, and then find out what kind of gold is it.
Yeah.
Are there any applications, say, in barcode reading for this type of edge computing?
Sure.
Because you're talking about edge detection. I know like a data matrix code would have the finder pattern,
Absolutely.
the L shape.
Yes.
And in logistics and warehousing, these things are flying by at
They are.
hundreds of meters a minute. And they have to be very quick. And they're taking a whole high-res image, let's say, because they have a big wide belt,
Right.
meter-wide belt that they need to cover. But there's only a barcode here and maybe one here.
Right.
So they can find the barcode, extract that data, and then do the decoding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if I'm doing edge detection, I'm looking for lines.
Yeah.
Or I'm looking for lines that are, I'm looking for two lines that are close to each other within a certain number of pixels, which is typically how they're going to do it, because that gives you a local window operator. You can push that over the whole image. You're like, aha, I found something. And then you can say, well, I found something in this region. And then you can extract that image and send it to the back-end processor. Or in these adaptive compute devices, I now have two processors on the chip. Maybe I want to do it there. Absolutely. Barcode is actually one of the easier ones because it's nice and regular. Right? But if we're looking at cell deformation, or looking into bio, like, okay, well, I'm trying to find the circularity of a cell. So they do this. They shoot a cell into this pressure chamber, essentially, and on a chip. And they see how the cell deforms. And then they know, and I don't know this, but they know that if you deform it under this certain pressure, this kind of cell stays more round, this one goes flat, and they can characterize circularity of that cell going down. So it's really cool stuff, all at really crazy high frame rates.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're saying maybe AI isn't required for barcodes because it's too regular?
It's too regular. Yeah, it's well established, and there are algorithms to do that.
Okay.
So AI is like really exciting when you want to do a classifier, and a classifier means, hey, I want to know, is it one of these 5 things? And this one may be none of the above, right? And that's okay. And so we're going to say, okay, well, does it look like a car or a person or an animal or a tree? It's just simplified, right? So I can classify that image and I can say, well, it's most like this. And I can have a certainty that that's definitely it. And so we're looking at certainty, and that's where all these AI models come in and training. So we can say, aha, I can definitely classify high certainty. This is what it is. And did we know how we did it? No. That's the cool part, right? It's like statistics, right? Without actually knowing how we did it, we're doing training, and it's looking at all these features and adding weights to these features, and the system through training is doing that. And it's really cool. Like, so you can classify all sorts of things. So if you need to do a classifier, AI is perfect.
Is there? Yeah, you mentioned AMD, the future of AMD this year is going to be a lot with AI, but I'm curious in terms of AI and any other predictions you might have, like, is there anything you see as being like a market that's kind of ripe for adoption or increased adoption when it comes to AI?
That's a good question. It's quite a huge field.
In the industrial sense.
Yeah, the industrial. Well, we work with certain customers, so I can't talk to all of those things. So that's usually where I get my insight as to, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I'll take a pass on that one.
No crystal ball.
Yeah, no. That would get into. So we work with a lot of customers, and AI is definitely, and it's a mix. It's not just AI by itself. It's
Sure.
front end processing. So think about AI as, if I give you a noisy image, or I give you a bad image, maybe bad lighting, or at Photonics West, if you don't have good lighting and you don't have good lenses, you've got a crappy image, and then the processing has to deal with the crappy image. Okay, well, we need to then do everything we can to improve that image. And there's some front-end processing we can do. Maybe we're smoothing things out. Maybe we know in the environment that's, I want to get rid of something, I want to even out my light, and we can do that deterministically without AI, but then we're getting it all ready. So now my AI has a cleaner image, and it can do a better job. So garbage in, garbage out.
Right.
So we definitely see more image processing, traditional image processing going into the camera. While that may not be AI, it's absolutely necessary for AI. And then with AMD, with their adaptive compute, there's a plethora of stuff out there. So if you take PyTorch algorithms, which is a language you can define AI in, or deep neural nets in, you can actually compile that into what's called a DPU, which is a DNN processing unit inside the FPGA. So it can actually be right in it. We've done this for a number of algorithms. We looked at some vibration analysis. And we thought, oh, wow, we can actually predict when something's going to fail based off of the vibration that we're seeing now. And that's kind of obvious, but then you're like, well, what is that? Well, how do I know? Well, I don't know. We trained the system, right? This is the cool part, right? It's like, it's not like we're going in blind, but we're going in, well, we know that there's something going on here. We're not really sure. Maybe we can train it to classify it. Is it this? Is it that? And you can. And that's the cool part. That's why I think everybody's like, oh my, it's gonna solve everything. We're gonna just be sitting on our couches. No.
Yeah, and then these models are only as good as the data they're trained with. So, we talked about this yesterday, but there's so much talk of, it's mainly robots, but automation technologies are going to take our job. Well, no.
No.
Not really.
No.
Still require human input, human in the loop, people to operate these systems, troubleshoot them.
We're going to just do more.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to end up doing. Because, we have the workforce. We're going to apply the workforce. Right, so maybe we're going to be doing more intelligent things. And that doesn't necessarily mean, and then there's some things that robots are just not good at yet. You look at food service, you look at that, there's all sorts of things that human interaction, we need that.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's only food service, but that's a great example of something that's like, you can't get a robot in there. And maybe it's going to deliver your food on a little robot. We've seen that. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? So
I want a robot that can fold my clothes.
there you go.
That's a tough AI.
Well, and if it was slow, it wouldn't matter, as long as I don't have to.
Yeah, it could be fold clothes 24/7.
Right.
As long as they're drawer, I'm happy.
It'd be great. Just make it magic. We want some magic.
Yeah, how about a robot that can plow my driveway when the snow blow?
Oh yeah, right?
That'd be nice.
Right? While it's snowing and I'm sleeping and just gotta come up my driveway, it's all done.
That'd be great. Ray, anything else that we didn't ask about? We've covered a good amount here, but
no. So there really is some cool product coming out with high resolution images. SPIE has a 151 megapixel camera. They also have a 600 frame per second a camera that's off a 25 gig E. So pushing the envelope, higher speeds. We have a GigaSense, we call it, camera that actually we can put compute inside the camera. And we're just, hey, what would you like to do? So this is the exciting part for us is, I don't know how fast you want to go. If we ROI down, we can do 80,000 frames a second and do compute at the same time. I don't care. So this is the fun stuff. So my guy, all right, if you have gigabit per second processing to do, this is what we do. And this is the fun stuff. So I love to talk with people, just to give, advice or feedback. And then if they want to move forward with a high speed, that's what we do. We love it.
Yep. How can people get in touch with you?
They can send an email to info@concurrenteda.com. And myself and someone else gets it, so that way I don't drop the ball. So
Yeah, and obviously he said it, but you can visit concurrenteda.com to learn more. And yeah, if you have any questions for us or for Ray, we'd be happy to pass them along. It's manufacturing-matters.com. Yeah, reach out anytime, questions, comments, concerns, whatever. So thanks for listening or watching.